Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session all about OET myths and misconceptions. My name's Alex. I'm from the OET education team, and joining me shortly will be my colleague Rebecca. And together we are going to sort fact from fiction when it comes to OET. We're going to run through some of the most common myths and pieces of misinformation about the test. We're going to answer some of your questions as well. And we're also going to share some really exciting news, something brand new from OET, so stick around for that too. If you're with me live on YouTube and Facebook, use the live chat function. And if you're watching after the stream, just leave us a comment below and we'll do our best to answer for you. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to welcome Rebecca along.
Hey, Alex.
Hello.
Good to have you on board and lovely to share this session with you today.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. So a little background for everyone. We're both in the education team, which means that we're here on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and liaising with customer support. Our role is really to help candidates pass the test. And as we're doing that on our adventures, we come across a lot of mistruths and strange questions. And so yeah, Rebecca, you can probably give a little background on the kind of questions that we get and what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, it's completely true, Alex. The education team see a lot of questions from candidates messaging us via Facebook or in my regular Q&A sessions about things like whether there have been any changes to the test, whether this is allowed or that is allowed. So it seems that there's a lot of disinformation out there. And what I would always say to candidates is it's best to check directly with OET. If you hear something you're not sure about, get in touch with us. And at the end of the session, we'll tell you exactly how you can do that.
Fantastic. Shall we get straight into it? We're going to cover 7 myths before we answer your questions on the chat. So we're going to start with number 1, Rebecca. Let me bring this up for us. Okay, first myth. The exam is getting harder and OET is changing the criteria. Fact or fiction?
Yeah, that's a good one. And I definitely say that one is fiction. So obviously candidates do regularly contact us about whether there have been any changes to the test, whether we're changing the criteria and things like that. But the test is standardized, OET is standardized, and our processes about how we prepare the questions, about how we assess the test, these things have all been explained to and approved by the regulators that accept OET results. And whereas each test does contain new test materials, so different topics, different scenarios are being used, the level of challenge is roughly the same for any test that a candidate takes. And to further help make sure that every candidate has the same opportunity to get the score that they want on test day, things like the assessment processes balance that out. So there aren't any set grade boundaries to pass listening and reading, for example. So those are some of the things that we just tell to candidates to reassure them if they ask us that question.
Mm-hmm. And it's impossible, right, that the criteria is going to change overnight without anybody being informed. That's not the way it works in any kind of testing, and certainly not in OET.
No, absolutely, Alex. And you and I would certainly be panicking right now if there was any chance of the test criteria to change as suddenly as that, because obviously our work, our jobs would be severely impacted if we were going to make such changes. So if at any point we are going to make any changes to the test, like we did back in 2018, we tell candidates well in advance. Candidates were being told a year, 6 months in advance. They were being given examples of what was changing so that they're able to prepare themselves accurately. It's never going to happen really quickly.
Sleep easy on that one. All right. Number 2, Rebecca, some of the skills in the test are more difficult than those in real life, or some people tell us or ask us the skills that are in the test are not reflected in the healthcare workplace. How would you answer that concern?
Yeah, that's another good one. So obviously OET is a test of healthcare English, and the purpose of OET and why so many candidates like taking the test is because it's going to prepare them for their work in an English-speaking healthcare workplace. Now, of course, there is a little bit of a balance that has to go on there, because obviously while we do try to make the tasks as true to life as possible, and to do that we speak to regulators, to healthcare employers, to alumni who are working in a healthcare environment, and we say to them, what kinds of skills do you need in English to be able to perform your job? So we do make sure that the tasks, as much as possible, reflect real life. But the balance is that it also has to test a candidate's English to be at the level the regulator requires, which for most candidates is a B grade. And that means, as an example, if the writing task was simply to write a short set of notes in a sort of handover style document, which is a very commonly used healthcare task, that short piece of notes wouldn't actually give us enough variety of English, enough complexity of English for us to be able to say, this candidate has a B grade of English. So there has to be a balance. These are tasks that healthcare professionals use, but they also produce English at a level that we can test.
Yeah, I think this is a really understandable complaint or concern that people have, and it comes up in all of the language tests, because ideally, it would be great if we could follow you around at work for 2 weeks and watch every interaction, interview every patient. Did you understand everything? That's really what is trying to be replicated. Can you cope? Can you thrive in an English-speaking healthcare scenario? But for the practicalities of a test, it's not possible.
Exactly. So, yeah, you've hit it spot on, Alex. We have to do what we can in a testing environment.
All right. Myth 3, remarking. Okay, so this one is something we're asked a lot. If I ask for a remark, should I presume I will pass? Is it guaranteed for me?
Yeah. So some of the interesting myths that we see coming through as questions to OET really make it out that OET is a horrible, cruel test provider, that it's our business just to try and make sure we get as much money from our candidates as possible. But that couldn't actually be further from the truth. We love it when our candidates are successful, and we really encourage you. In fact, that is the work that Alex and I are doing every day. We really encourage you to prepare properly. We make sure that we give you preparation materials so that you can be successful, hopefully the first time around. And so we really want to see you succeed, and we don't like it when candidates are unsuccessful and need to take the test more time. So when candidates ask us this question and presume, as you just said, Alex, that they're going to pass on the remark, it's because they think OET just wants to take some more money and then they'll give you a pass. But that's not how the assessment process works. Very briefly, when you submit or when you complete your OET test the first time around, 2 assessors will independently mark your each part of your test, and they'll give you a score. And those scores go through quality checks and processes before that score reaches you to make sure they're valid and fair. Now, if you apply for a remark, because understandably, sometimes candidates are disappointed with the score that they want, that they've received, so they apply for a remarking. And what happens in that situation is that a pair of assessors will again look at your paper and assess it without knowing the original scores that you received. And in that case, or in most cases, candidates don't see any change in their remarking score because the assessors in both instances are using the same set of assessment criteria or the same answer key, and they're going to come up with the same type of result for you the second time around.
Mm-hmm. So it is possible, but certainly not a guarantee.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a human process, and as healthcare professionals can understand as well, with any kind of human process, there is always going to be a margin of error. But in those cases, OET also has stringent training process and for the assessors to make sure that if any retraining is needed, they go through that.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to number 4. All about accents and listening. All right, OET uses accents which are hard to understand in the listening test. This is something that we're asked quite a lot about, and people worry that they're going to get an accent that they won't be able to understand.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And I think you and I are good examples here of two different types of English accents. You grew up in Australia.
English and
yeah.
And
I grew up in the UK. So we both have a different version of English, but I think everyone listening would say that we're pretty easy to understand. So OET is a global English healthcare test. And for those reasons, the voices that we use in the listening test reflect the voices that you are going to be working with in the workplace when you have got your results and you're able to enter the new workplace that you're going to work in. The majority of accents will come from the largest body of English speakers. So that's from the UK, from America, and from Australia. But within those countries, just by themselves, a range of accents exist. They are very multicultural countries as well. So it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with as much variety as possible by listening to podcasts, watching TV programs. And Alex, I think you've got a good link to share there.
Yeah, I'll paste into the chat box here just the link to the information page about listening from the website, which down the right-hand side of it has some links to podcasts from Australia and the UK. And within those podcast programs, they contain a lot of different accents, not just Australian and British, but others as well. And yeah, what a time to be alive when it comes to accessing media and accents. Podcast, free, easy, everybody can get them on their phone. Netflix, YouTube, you can find all those accents everywhere, and get familiar with them. Even just Google Scottish accent, have a listen, see what it sounds like.
Yeah, and that's actually maybe a good point to also add, because if they were to Google a Scottish accent, they might come across something which even I would find a bit difficult to understand, because there are some pretty funky accents that you can listen to from around the world. So while that's a great idea and it's fun to listen to different people's accents, it's also worth remembering that all OET audios are recorded using voices that are clear to understand, regardless of their accent. And another little tip that I have is whenever you're listening to an audio with more than one voice in it, there'll always be one male voice and one female voice, so that it's easier for you to distinguish who's talking in that.
All right, thank you. So up to 5 of 7. Myth 5. We're still on that sort of accent tilt, I suppose. This concern is, if I don't use British English, I will be penalised by the assessors. Is this the case?
No, it's not. And so despite coming from the UK and thinking that British English is obviously the best version of English that there is, this isn't something that OET penalises. And last year, OET was thrilled to gain recognition in America for the first time. And so now we can truly say that we are a global healthcare test. However, we have always accepted, even prior to last year, through the whole of OET's history, we've always accepted both American and British spelling conventions, and there's no penalty for using either version. The only thing we would say is that you do need to be consistent. So if, for example, in the writing test, you're using American spelling at the start of your letter, you need to use American spelling throughout your writing. Otherwise, the assessor is going to be confused about whether if you're switching between styles of spelling, it's actually because you don't have a good spelling ability. So be consistent, but it's absolutely fine to use either British or American spelling conventions.
And good practice in the real world, just stick with one as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right.
All right. Myth number 6. Okay, I will score higher if I memorize complex phrases to use. Should I learn stock standard sentences and chunks of language and put them into my writing and my speaking?
I can completely understand why candidates want to do that. I mean, there's a certain amount of reassurance that comes from learning some phrases that are going to be useful. And certainly in my previous education, that was something that I would do preparing for the test. But I think the key thing to remember is you can only use a phrase when you're writing or speaking if it's appropriate to the situation you're writing or speaking about. And the problem with some of these learned phrases that candidates use is they're not 100% sure as to when they are appropriate to use them or not. And so put them in there thinking that they're going to get a higher score if they use them. There's also a little bit of misunderstanding, I think, which comes from candidates who've taken another type of English test, which does perhaps reward candidates for using more complex vocabulary or language. OET is a healthcare test, and it's about whether you can communicate clearly in English, either to a healthcare colleague if you're writing, or to a patient or a relative of a patient if you're speaking. And so the primary focus really is on the clarity of that communication rather than the complexity. So you're not specifically going to be rewarded for complex language. In fact, it's better to be clear and personalized to the situation rather than just to try and show off some particular phrase that you've learned.
Mm-hmm. And I'll paste in the chat box a link to a blog article of ours related to connectors, which covers that same point that you've mentioned, Rebecca, trying to just put words in for the sake of it where they may not be super appropriate. I'll just share that with you guys in the chat.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, Alex, I'd say this is one of our most popular blog articles that candidates look at. And for the reason you've just mentioned, I think coming to OET from other language tests, where, as I said, you're perhaps rewarded by using complex connectors, this, again, isn't the case for OET. And it's good to know that there are some connectors, and this article goes through it, which are suitable for different types of writing. So academic essay writing connectors, such as furthermore or moreover, are not the sort of connectors that you are going to use in a letter to a healthcare professional. So go and check out that article if that's something of interest to you.
Mm-hmm. And there are a bunch of sample tasks on the website as well, which might be useful, even if it's not your profession, just to read through and see how those letters, how the sentences are linked as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really recommend that to candidates, not just to look at the letters that are there for their profession, but for all of the professions, because they're really good examples of how English is personalized to a situation. You will see that very few of those letters, and there's a huge amount on there covering all 12 professions, very few of them are using any sort of repeated phrases. So great to have a look at, and that's a really good tip, Alex.
All right, so we are up to our final myth. So hopefully you guys watching can start thinking about your own questions. I can see some coming through in the chat. Myth number 7, if I write more than 201 words, I cannot get a B for writing. Is this the case?
So I'm going to completely say that one is a myth. And lots of candidates believe that there's something called a fatal error. It's an expression that really resonates with me. I sort of feel someone stabbing themselves and saying, oh, I've got a fatal error. But these actually don't exist. An example of a fatal error is something like writing more than 200 words, perhaps using the wrong gender pronoun for the patient in the letter or in the speaking test, starting with introductions when the background suggests you've met this patient before. These are all things candidates describe as fatal errors, but they don't exist. They're all myths. There isn't anything in the assessment criteria which says these things mean an automatic fail. So in terms of the word count, assessors do not count your words. And the main thing, as I've talked about a couple of times in this session now, is clarity of your communication. And if you're selecting the case notes correctly, that the reader needs to continue care for the patient, then your letter will naturally fall within that guided word limit. But if you're slightly over or slightly under, it's not going to have a big impact on your score.
All right, that is clear. So that is our top 7 myths that we come across. And we're going to take some of your own questions in the chat box now while Rebecca is having a look through that. I'm going to talk to you. I promised that we had a special announcement, and we have just launched something brand new from OET, which will be of use to a lot of you, and it's called OET Pulse. And consider it a health check for your English. So this is basically a short test which assesses your reading and listening skills and your language knowledge. It's fairly short. You get your answers immediately. You get feedback and some guidance on how to continue your OET preparation. You can take it anywhere, anytime, any device. And it's a fantastic way to find out if you are ready to take the OET test, and if you're not, what you can do to help yourself get more ready. As we've just launched it, there's a special price. So it's 15 Aussie dollars down from 30, so half price. I'm going to paste the link into the chat box as well. And you'll find information about Pulse on our website, of course. This will take you to the shop to read a little bit about it. And if you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, or we'll tell you at the end how to get in touch with our customer support team. But OET Pulse, brand new, highly recommend if you want to test your English without doing the full test. And yeah, you can take it right now if you want to.
Great. And yeah, I think it's a really great innovation that we've brought there with OET Pulse. It's always a really good place to start by checking your current level of English and knowing how close you are to the score that you're aiming at. So I've had a look through the questions, Alex, and there's a couple I think that we can pick up on. I've seen a few questions. I'm going to pop this one up on the screen that are commenting on the speed of the audio. So some questions were saying, yeah, okay, the accent is fine, but the audio is fast. Or as we can see, this one from Sayama is saying the listening audio is very fast. Could you provide normal audios? I don't know how you feel the speed that Alex and I have been talking at this afternoon, but I would say that the speed on the audios wouldn't be any faster than the speed in that Alex and I have spoken at this afternoon. Again, the audios are specially recorded for OET, so if anything, they are clearer and at a slightly lower speed than they would be if they were at authentic real life standards, because this is a test and we know that we're testing non-native speakers. So if you are finding the speed of the audio a little bit difficult, please go and look for that link Alex posted to the listening resources that we have, those podcasts she mentioned. That's going to be the best way to familiarize yourself with the speed that is used in the test.
I'll just post that back in the chat box now in case anyone missed it. Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make. And when you listen to a podcast or real English, authentic English, compared to test English, which OET, we would consider that test English. It's not natural speed. It's not as fast as normal speed. When you compare the two, you'll see the test is actually slower and clearer. Compared to what you'll hear on podcasts. I think that's why listening to podcasts and listening to authentic English is really, really good practice. Not only because that's what you're actually going to hear in the real world, but it can make the test seem easier.
Absolutely.
Slower, maybe I should say, not easier.
Yeah, that's true. There's another question that I'm just going to pick up on, which was about practice questions. I've just lost it. But the question was, I'll keep looking for it. Do you use are the real test day tasks more difficult than the practice tasks that you find on the OET website and in the OET preparation materials? So we use in our practice materials authentic practice tests. So these have been written by the same people that write the tests that you see on test day. And they meet the same criteria in terms of challenge. So the tests that you use to practice with, if they've come from the official OET website, from the materials that you can find in the OET shop, then you can feel confident that the level of difficulty, the level of challenge is the same. Here's the question. It was from Adrian. It is the same. And if you score well using the answer keys that are available with those practice tests, then you can feel that you're going to perform in a similar way in the live test on test day.
Mm-hmm. All right, shall we do one more, maybe two more?
Yeah, I can see a few people are asking questions about Pulse. So maybe because this is a brand new product, I'll just mention a few candidates are saying, can I just use it once only? So the design of Pulse, as Alex said, is to be a placement test. So here's an example question from Ali. Is OET Pulse can be used once only? Is designed to be a placement test and to tell you what your current level of English is and perhaps how close you are from that level of English that you see as a result at the end of Pulse to the score that you want to receive on test day. So it's not a mock test, it's not a practice test, it's a placement test. You complete a series of questions on listening, reading, and use of English. And the questions are adaptive, which means the first question that you take will be sort of middle of the road in terms of challenge. If you get that question correct, then the next question you see will be slightly more challenging. If you get the question wrong, it will be slightly easier. And this continues throughout the test, either getting more difficult or easier until you're essentially flatlining at the level of English that you are able to operate at. And so at the end of that placement test, you'll get a score of what your current level is. But it's not like taking a practice OET test or even the real OET test. It doesn't cover all 4 skills. It isn't as long as that part of the test. So it's not something that we are expecting candidates to take multiple times. It's unlikely that you will end up with a different result, even though you may see different questions, because it's designed to be a placement test only.
Right.
All right. I think that's covered most of the questions I can see coming through.
Right. There was one I saw somebody before ask about free preparation. Please provide more free preparation. And so I just will take this opportunity to remind you to follow us on Facebook or subscribe on YouTube, because we do actually go live several times a week with our all-star partners who run free sessions through the OET channels. And Rebecca, you're live at least once a week doing Q&A and live chats. So just make sure that if you're on YouTube, you're subscribed so that you find out when those sessions are happening, or keep an eye on Facebook and our socials too. Absolutely. And I guess in a similar vein, I know we've missed some questions here, but we do have a very hardworking, wonderful team of customer support people. So Rebecca, if you want to just cover, if we haven't answered your question today, where can people go to get answers to their questions?
Absolutely. So as Alex mentioned, we've got a really great customer support team who are available on live chats 24/7, Monday to Friday. So you can get in touch with them if you have a question about booking your test, sitting your test, getting your test results and so forth. And you can find the live chat button from the OET website. It's a green help button, a little green circle that will sit in the bottom corner of the OET website when you log into it. or open it up even. There's no login page as such. So contact them that way. Otherwise, you can also contact them via email or over the phone. And you can also submit questions to OET via Facebook Messenger. These could be questions, again, about the test, but also test preparation questions. And a member of the team will get back to you as soon as they can with an answer to that question. So we're really responsive. We love hearing from you, and we're happy to help you with your queries, because we want you to feel as comfortable as possible when it comes to test day.
Don't believe those myths.
Exactly. So, as I said at the start, do come and check those out with us. If there's anything strange that you're hearing, anybody suggesting OET has changed something really rapidly, as Alex said, it's not going to happen overnight or even in the space of a week or a month. So do check those out with us, and we'll be able to put you straight and reassure you.
All right, let's wrap it up, and good luck to those taking their test on the weekend. I saw a few people saying their test is coming up this Saturday, so we wish you all the best. Please come back and share your good news when you get your results. And Rebecca will be back next week.
That's right. I've got a Q&A live coming up on Tuesday, so do join me then if you do have some preparation questions, and I'll look forward to answering them. I'm going to give Alex a round of applause for her very first live session for OET, and we'll look forward to seeing some more of Alex over the coming weeks and months. But you did a great job today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for coming along. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.
Bye for now.